Wednesday, April 24th, 2024, meeting of the Harpswell Board of Appeals. On our agenda this evening, well, I guess I'll start by introducing the members of the board. To my left, Steve Musica. I'm Ned Simmons, the chair. To my right is David Zemnorowski. Did I pronounce that properly?
Better than I did.
Who is our associate member, but since we have a couple of regular members absent this evening, I'll appoint him as a full voting member for the evening. And beyond him, Pat Lawson. On our agenda this evening, we have election of officers. We have a variance request by Make an Impact LLC, and we will be considering minutes of our March 22nd, 2023 meeting. That was our last meeting, and discussion of alternate schedules for our June 26th and December 25th meetings this year. We do have a quorum. Quorum is 3 members. The typical procedure here, we try to keep things relatively informal, but anyone who wishes to speak should step to the microphone and identify themselves. Any questions or comments should be directed through the chair. In general, we'll allow the applicant to make their presentation first and follow up with questions from the board and other interested parties. Any interested parties are present will have an opportunity to speak. They should also step to the microphone, identify themselves. In particular, if you think you have any reason to, or may have any reason to object or wish to appeal any decision taken this evening, you should, at minimum, step to the microphone, identify yourself, and state the question, the substance of what your concern may be. That's in order to protect your rights of appeal. Any verbal representations made become a part of the record. I'll note that we did have a site visit on Monday. I was there, Pat was there, Steve was there, as well as Steve Bruall, who is not with us this evening. I guess our first order of business is the election of officers. In the past, I think when all the members haven't been here, we've put that off until everyone's here. So I'll make a motion that we postpone that until all the regular board members are present.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor? The motion carries 4-0. Next is the variance request by Make an Impact LLC. I understand that Mr. Matero is here representing the owners. I will quickly run through the.
Just got a quick question.
Yeah.
Are you going to be doing the minutes? Or because they said they were, I was trying to think of her name. My God,
Margaret?
Margaret was not, yeah.
Yeah.
Here, does she usually take the minutes when she's?
Oh, doing the minutes for this evening?
Yes.
Somebody, I assume, will do them off the tape. Is that correct?
Excuse me.
Oh.
She should be able to take them for recording.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
I'll run through the application package before you start, Mr. Matero. We have a cover letter from David Matero. We have the town's Board of Appeals variance request application dated 3/28. We have a deed verifying an interest in the property by Make an Impact LLC. We have a letter authorizing Mr. Matero to represent the owners. We have several pages of narrative and photographs addressing the various requirements of the variance. We have a letter from a structural engineer and some additional photos of the floor framing. We also have a boundary survey of the property, an aerial photograph of the property, and several pages of showing the existing condition of the structure in question, as well as the proposed changes to the building. I think that covers it. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Matero, if
Okay, great, thank you. Well, yes, my name is David Matero. My company, there's Tim. David Matero Architecture is located in Bath. I want to thank the board for your time and consideration of this variance request. I don't typically like to begin meetings with an apology, but I missed a site visit. The schedule was mailed to my office, and I didn't see it. I would have gladly have met you on site, taken you inside to show you the main reason that we're here, some of the structural issues, but I apologize for not being at that site visit. That's typically something that we would obviously do. So as I begin, I'd also like to point out that there is a way for this project to move forward without a variance, just as designed. All of the county and the town records regarding 42 Cedar Beach Road indicate the property is in the shoreline zone, including tax maps and property cards, and the design process to fix the significant structural issues discovered after the owners purchased the property. We took care to ensure those changes fell within the constraints laid out in the shoreline zone ordinance. However, the size of the parcel, the location of the house, we have 250 feet of shoreline, and the house itself is located further than 250 feet from the water. So it triggered an interior zone review instead of a shoreline zone review. As we expected, a shoreline zone, because that's what all the property cards said. Surprisingly, in this case, the interior zone ordinance is more restrictive than the shoreline zone ordinance. Shoreline zoning does not have any road setback requirements. It doesn't constrain area or volume. It only constrains, footprint and building height. All of those elements we fit within the parameters. But the code office is currently reviewing this project under the interior zone ordinance. And that is why we're coming here to seek a variance. I bring this up to highlight the uniqueness of this project. I understand variances are not awarded lightly, but I do feel that this project is a good case for a variance to address the unintended consequences and thereby allow work to both conserve a historic structure and make it habitable. So for a variance to be granted, we must demonstrate that we meet those the criteria of those four elements. The first is regarding a reasonable return on the purchase. The owners purchased this house less than a year ago. It's a large oceanfront parcel with a quaint historic cottage, originally built in 1890. Improvements have been made by previous owners over the years. They must have lifted up the house and put a brand-new concrete dry basement underneath. At some point, a living room and a new primary bathroom was added. There are two original bedrooms on the second floor with a very low usable footprint, very low headroom. Although they do not meet the definition of a legal bedroom due to head height issues, they're grandfathered. The same goes for the stairs that lead up to the second floor. The first floor main area of the dining room and the bedroom also have very low ceilings, under 7 feet, but again, these areas are grandfathered. The owners obviously knew of the low ceilings when they purchased the house, but what they did not know was how stressed and unstable the second floor structure is. We asked our structural engineer to look at it after they purchased the house. And there's a pretty good photo on Exhibit E from our structural engineer that's in your package. Those are 3x5 timber joists at 24 inches on center, and they span 22 feet. That's, at the time, okay, but the engineer, we could reinforce that floor. He came up with a plan to do it. However, it lowers the ceiling height of the main part of the house to 6'4", to a point where it technically isn't even allowed by code, nor is it really practical for a family to reside in the home. The minimum head height by building code for habitable spaces is 7 feet. Even that's pretty low, but that's the minimum allowed. So when we got involved, the goal of the project was to fix the structural deficiencies of the home to meet current code. So to accomplish this, we proposed to remove and lift the second floor to a standard 8-foot ceiling height in the main level. The stairs would obviously be reconstructed, and they would also meet today's code, both in rise and run and head height. Because we'd remove the roof, and we'd like to rebuild that to make 2 legal bedrooms on the second floor. And they would also be, or should be, code compliant for head height as well as egress windows. In many instances, older homes have non-code compliant elements all the time, but they're grandfathered. But once we renovate or affect the structure, we're really required to meet the current building codes. So the value of this property is commensurate with the price paid in its recent purchase. It's really contingent on the habitability of a charming 3-bedroom historic home overlooking the beautiful waterfront on Bailey Island. The expected return on a waterfront property with an uninhabitable house is obviously far less than what the owners expected when they purchased a property with a usable house. If the owners are unable to fix the structural problems they discovered in the house to make it code compliant, it'll greatly reduce the value of the property and suffer an immediate and significant loss. The second criteria relates to the unique circumstances of the property. During our meeting with the code office, when we discussed the situation of the project, they mentioned that they had never seen a non-conforming structure in an interior zone off a shoreland zone, so at least it's unique to the code office. But in 1958, the town of Harpswell took over what was a right-of-way. It was known as Oceanside Road, and now it's known as Cedar Beach Road. The road was put through the west side of the property, but not at the property line. So instead, the road splits the property. It leaves a relatively small, unbuildable piece of property on the west side of the road. And, obviously the rest is on the east side, on the water side. So the town, by establishing this road through the property and close to the existing house, it's very close, you guys have been there, it helped create a non-conforming structure due to its proximity to the road. So as I noted earlier, the restrictions on expansions to non-conforming structures in the shoreline zone are less restrictive than they are in the interior zone. Much about this property is unique, and part of this was inadvertently caused by the town when they established the road in the 50s. So even before we were forced to consider a variance, the owner asked us to address the structural issues in a way that also embraces and enhances the existing design and character of the cottage. We feel that we meet criteria 3, which, explaining why granting of a variance will not alter the essential character of the locality by using similar materials, windows, and details as the original house, as well as keeping the massing as low as possible and maintaining similar roof lines. As you can see from our drawings, clearly the roof is higher. There's no way around it. It's I think, 5 feet, 5 inches higher than the existing roof. but great effort was made to minimize its impact on the original design and maintain the character of the neighborhood and in the house itself. The windows are obviously larger on the second floor, but they also meet egress requirements. Much of the house remains intact, and we're even proposing to maintain the prominent stone chimney by extending it as we raise the roof. The final criteria is how the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or prior owner. As I noted earlier, the town inadvertently created the hardship by enforcing sort of modern setback requirements on the house after taking over the road that bisects the property. But in reality, the most significant problem stems from the failure of the structural system that's over 130 years old. I'd wish you'd seen it in place, but it really does require rebuilding that second floor to make the house safe and also code compliant. In 1890, the floor structure may have been sufficient, but it has deflected over time to the point of almost failure. So upgrading the structural system to make the house safe forces us to raise the second floor and roof to make it code compliant. And this is possible without affecting the essential character of the house. It keeps much of the house intact, but it's only allowed in a variance the way it's written. I'm here to answer questions, but I do want to thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm happy to stay and answer any other questions you might have.
Board have any questions?
May I?
Yes.
Did the owner and you consider a one-level addition to this house coming toward the water, since it appears that there's a lot of room to do that?
Oh, I mean, there's room to put a 10,000 square foot house there. So to abandon the existing house? Because the existing house, our engineer does not recommend that, people live on the second floor of that house. And the first floor is so low, so, to answer your question, no, we did not consider adding on to the front. I mean, that's where all the views are. The goal is to maintain two bedrooms and the dining room. We did not consider adding 2 bedrooms on the first floor. It would just take out views from the living spaces.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Then if you can, you need to come up here and state your name.
Hi, my name's Candy Wright. I actually live directly behind the property, but I actually know a lot about the property because my sister owns it. There's a covenant to the property that says you cannot build forward for the next 15 years.
15,
15.
and forward being between the house and the water.
Yep.
Near,
Yep.
nearer
And-
to the water.
And that was built into the purchase of the previous owner. Obviously, it was a longer time frame when they bought it. And from the time they bought it last year, the time frame extends another 15 years. So it's possible, but it's not possible for the next 15 years.
That solved that.
That's a better answer than mine.
Well, it solves that mystery with respect to building closer to the water. Now, I think your question was, could this building footprint be enlarged to accommodate the needs of the owners? And it presumably could be extended in another direction.
Yeah, so there's
It's still, then it would still be in the setback, right?
yeah.
However, the only way I
Okay.
saw to do this.
Sorry,
Mary Ann, I'm sorry, because I thought I had, okay, that makes sense. Okay, where was I?
You are correct. The Other than a foot or two on the water side of the house, everything is within the setback of the road.
Right, because that was a mystery to me. I guess the entire deed wasn't in there then, right? The portion of, I guess it's the deed that has that covenant in it? Wasn't,
Yeah, I would assume it would be, well, I don't know how
In
many
a
deeds you have on
prior-
that property,
in a
but.
prior
the
prior, and
covenants-
referenced somehow, there's probably more to this deed than just the page of it we have.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Is the basement's a full basement?
It is,
No, it's not,
but it's fully below grade too, though.
but it's a stand-up
Yeah,
basement, yeah.
I wish I had it.
The, can you describe what the engineers came up with for a repair to the structure?
Well, there's really no repairing the existing structure. It's beyond its life.
Or augmenting, or,
And so what they came up with was a conventional LVLs and lumber
well, you said they had come up with some sort of a plan.
that would have lowered it, right?
Would have
So-
lowered it.
So,
What
yeah,
was that going to be?
well, it would have, it's in his letter, but it would have involved deeper members, deeper structure members.
What about,
That would,
what about a steel framing system?
well, it still doesn't solve the headroom issue. I mean, the headroom issue is still, it's still 7 feet.
I don't
It's still
want-
less than 7
I
feet.
don't want to replace your structural engineer's judgment with mine, but that was I was an engineer for 40 years.
Yeah,
I
well,
find a lot
we
of
have to,
steel.
that's steel within 5 inches. I mean,
Yeah,
not to make it any,
I ran the numbers.
any less.
It looked to me like it was possible that you could replace a 3x5 timber with a 5 or 6 inch deep steel wide flange beam, and it would be adequate, more than adequate, actually. I'm just wondering how,
Well, I don't know if you took steel into account, just, let's see his letter. On his point number 2, the existing second floor has experienced some significant deflection due to the loading of the bedroom above. The existing wood framing members have stretched their interior fibers to the point where it would be nearly impossible to jack the members up to an acceptable level that could work for a permanent fix. And that's trying to keep what's there and put steel up and jack it to a point where it's level that can maintain the second floor integrity. Now, that's related to putting an LVL to support the beams, but it's be the same premise as steel. I mean, I think it's so overstressed and so old that the second floor isn't worth salvaging.
I have a couple questions for Tim, if we, or
Yeah.
unless we have more.
No, I'm perfectly willing to
Yeah.
hear Tim's point of view.
Tim, can you enlighten us?
Could I ask one?
Oh, yeah.
Were you, did you have access to the engineering report that they, well, I was going to say obviously, but I won't say that, that they had done as part of the purchase and sale?
Well, Candy might know if one, I mean, these days, lots of times that's not even done, but I don't know if there was an inspection report done.
I can ask, but I don't believe that there was an engineering report prior to sale. So,
I know that's always
I'd be
recommended.
interested if there
Yeah.
was myself.
Candy can find out. She can text the owner.
there was not. There was not an engineering report prior to sale.
How about a home inspector's report?
Well, yeah, that type of,
Yeah, I think that's what my guess is no also.
that's brave. That's very
Well,
brave.
it is, but, you know, in today's market, once you put contingencies on your offer, you don't get it. Anyway,
Correct.
Question I had for Tim, one was, what, is there, what would jeopardize a certificate of occupancy for this? I mean, it's grandfathered at this point, that's correct, right?
For the house itself, the way it is.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. What kind of alterations or renovations or whatever would trigger the requirement that the ceilings be higher?
In reference to this addition, or this change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the main thing, I think, that is the minimum 7-foot ceiling, so that we can call it a real living space
Right.
that we're trying to achieve. To have all the bedrooms have proper egress.
But what would, at what point would those requirements be triggered? I mean, it's occupiable now, even though it may not be safe. I mean,
Right.
you're not gonna go and say you can't use it at this point, right?
Right.
At what
Good.
point would you say, okay, now you've done this, you've done X amount of work? Is it a percentage of the value of the house? Is it,
Well, by our ordinance, it's the value, they use the assessor's value. If you go to the 50%,
is that what it would trigger?
Yes.
50% business, if you were to remove 50% of the value, at that point, then you would have to come up to code.
right.
Yeah.
I would say
But-
that, yeah.
but-
Normally, it's used as a point, that's when I have to get the planning board in
Yeah.
and for their blessing for these changes, because it doesn't meet X amount.
Right, but for instance.
I know that's weird. I've never had anybody say, well, what are these steps, you know, because we think of, I walk in and do we have plumbing? Do we have shut-offs? Do we have smokes? Do we have this? Do we have that? That's what normally that's our check-off at the end, if you will.
At the end of a construction
Yeah.
project.
And I don't mean to go backwards here, but I was just concerned about, I believe you were saying you want to go up 5? And I understand where you're going with the floor thing, but we're only going to gain maybe less than a foot by changing the floor joists. I'm not trying to support, I'm just trying to make sure we're all talking about the same things, and whether or not they really help us achieve what you're asking. He's asking for this, and we might have a good idea. Well, what if you change the steel? And I used to build steel homes, so I realize
Right.
I have a little background there. Oh, yeah, I can do it with a 6-inch floor joist instead of a 12,
Right. Right.
that type of thing. Oh, well, I gained 6, but you want 5, I guess. Well, even if I change you, I can't get what you want.
Well, but
I don't-
I guess, and I'm not sure what the owner's priorities are. I mean,
Yeah,
it seems to me it's possible that they're saying, well, while we're doing all this, we might as well raise the ceilings up to a standard height.
right.
But they may, if everything was fine as is, well, maybe we can live with,
The 7 foot. I had to live with 7 foot in my house.
I think we all have at one
I couldn't
time or
change it.
another. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But if you're going to do new on stop,
Yeah, so.
you-
It's got to comply if this is a.
Right, at
Right.
some point, it's gonna trigger.
You still gotta come up to
It's gonna
what-
trigger a
right.
And if I heard you right, it literally is spending 50% of the value of the existing home that triggers the requirement
I think
that that
it's-
home be brought into complete conformance
I
with
think it's
existing
if
codes?
50% at any point is removed, is that correct?
That's usually what we're dealing with.
Yeah,
The
if in
50%
the
usually
process of
doesn't come into this
if in
play
the
for
process of the
a
project, 50% of the
variance.
value is gone, at any point.
Okay, that's a,
then it's an odd,
it's a peculiar, measurement.
There's another way to look at that, though. In our experience, if you have a non-code compliant stair and you want to rebuild the stair, that you need to make it code compliant, that has nothing to do
Right.
with the 50%
Right.
rule.
Yeah.
Right.
Got it.
And so a lot of this is that approach. We need to restructure the second floor. In our experience, for instance, if you take down a wall and you want to rebuild a wall, you need to insulate it per code, even though 90% of the house is not insulated per code. Our new walls would be insulated per code because we're affecting the walls. So our approach is whatever we're touching, we bring it up to code. And that's the right way to approach a project that slowly evolves into a house that does meet code, because as you renovate, it meets the current standards. So that's how we're approaching this house.
Yeah.
And that's how I would expect a building code official to force us to do that anyway.
So if I went back to the points that I think both Steve and Ned made in different ways, you need, am I correct in saying that you need an additional 1 foot of headroom to meet code in those second-floor bedrooms? And if so, so that's a question in and of itself, but then
Yeah.
secondly, you're asking for 5.5 feet.
Right.
How are you using the increment above what is necessary?
Well, right now on the second floor, when you stand in the middle of the ridge, that's at 7 feet. And it has these dormers that go down below 7 feet. So we currently don't even, there's a certain percentage of floor area that we're required to have, head height. And there's currently 2 bedrooms and a bathroom up there. And that's what we're trying to create, is 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. In addition, yeah, we have larger windows, but now they're also egress windows. And we're also taking advantage of the view, because it's right there. But, we don't, if we put a flat roof on it, then we wouldn't have to raise it as high. But I can't come here and present a flat roof to you guys and say it doesn't change the character of the house. So it's the same gable, but now we have to lift the sides of the gables up. So at least we have, 7 feet of width that has a 7-foot head height. So that's how it comes up to be more than 2 feet lifting the first floor and second floor. It becomes to 5 feet. The staircase, we have 6'8" headroom going up the staircase. That is the absolute minimum. So, we're only gaining, we feel we're really only gaining absolutely what we need. We're not trying to, this is not a money grab or a space grab. We're trying to get, actually technically 3 legal bedrooms, because the first floor doesn't have the ceiling height either. We're trying to get 3 legal bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a dining room that all are considered habitable spaces. And we're trying to maintain the character, the slopes of the roof, and, we're trying to do it, appropriately without, we're not trying to take more than we're sort of allowed.
So between conformance and character, that constitutes 100% of the difference in the proposed elevation?
Yeah, that's.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's-
yeah, correct,
And this whole thing is because it's too close to the road.
to the road.
Well,
That,
the other thing that's confounding this is the fact that it's in both the shoreline zone and the interior.
Well, that's what's
If
got
it
neat.
wasn't-
because we
If it wasn't for
presented-
that,
Yeah,
if
we
we
started the
We
shoreline.
started, yeah, we met with Tim and was like, oh, yeah, it's shoreline zone, because it's shoreline. But then when we got into more detail,
well, beyond that, it prevents us from considering a practical difficulty variance, which would eliminate
Correct.
which would eliminate the reasonable return requirement. But we can't consider that if any part of the property is in the shoreline zone.
and it does specifically say that, because we were
Right.
hoping to use that provision, but
Right.
it's any part.
I mean, I think that would have been a much easier
I-
hurdle to
disagree.
cross,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ned, could you, just for my edification, could you describe to me what that reasonable return on purchase
It's-
is in its essence?
Well, unfortunately, it's pretty tough to meet. In essence, it means the property has virtually no value. It's almost unsaleable, really. Just the fact that you're losing some money on it doesn't meet that standard. It's a pretty tough standard.
And this was a recent purchase,
Yeah,
as is, open market purchase. so presumably it was efficient, no gun to anybody's head,
Right.
and
Right, so it's hard.
no reason to know today that it's worth any less than it was when it was purchased.
Now,
Yeah,
the-
I'm not asserting that, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying it's,
no, I
it's
mean,
hard for me to see you buy something on Tuesday and then make a statement, which I'm not putting words in David's mouth, on Wednesday that it's worth, substantially less money.
I mean, one thing that is intriguing to me is the fact that there's a covenant that says you can't do anything else with it, which I don't know whether that gives us some latitude and, in considering that reasonable returns criteria.
I was just about to say the
Yeah.
same thing, because if this property were to be sold again, the disclosures will keep it from being sold. It's a bare lot. You might as well have a bare lot.
Right.
If you've said the house is basically uninhabitable because the second story is not being supported
It's
properly.
not safe. Yep.
It's stretching, and it's, gosh, going to be in the living room someday. This one, I
Well,
think.
and on
is
top of that, you can't just build something
No, and,
that's conforming.
correct.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, this is such a catch-22 thing that I believe the value of the property will be substantially less. Can you sell it as a waterfront lot? Not with that covenant.
Yeah, I mean, you maybe could have a dock down there, but you can't have a residence.
But it's compared to the value of the property,
Yeah.
it would be so much less if you couldn't build on it properly.
Right.
Or use the existing dwelling. I don't know, I'm usually right in there with well, this doesn't really mean you can't get anything, but
No, I know.
this is a strange
It
situation.
is, it's certainly unique. I don't think you have any trouble
Yeah,
with
so we
that
got
standard.
one of the four so far.
Well, in my opinion, 3 of the 4
Yeah, three of
are
the
a
four are
slam
fine.
dunk. It's the
But this
reasonable
one's-
return.
I think
But
we
Pat, you
have
do
to
make
decide.
you make a very good point. Knowing that you have to disclose what you know now, right? You can't hide the
Yes,
fact
correct.
that this is the house, portions of the house, some of the portions are perfectly fine, but some portions are unsafe. You can't build anywhere. You have a beautiful waterfront property, but you can't do anything with it for 15 years.
That's
Caveat emptor,
for whom?
buyer beware.
You can't,
Well,
that's
in,
illegal.
yeah, in Maine now, you have to disclose.
No, what I mean is, with respect to the existing owners, they in trying to compete with the marketplace, and I'm not expressing an opinion on one way or other, but I do want to express what I think are facts, is that they went out, purchased this property. It was evident in the deed. Presumably had a lawyer, or should have had a lawyer review the deed, that they couldn't be expanded in that direction. The structure, you can argue one way or another, but traditionally, people get it inspected. The inspection didn't require destruction or removal of material to find the defects. It was there, and it's there in the pictures. So, in a way, you got what you bought.
That's true, but even our first meeting, and I'm definitely not throwing you under the bus at all, we were sitting there together, and we said, this is the shoreline zone. We provided a design that meets the shoreline zone. Didn't involve much of a footprint, and didn't involve raising the roof. It fixed the structural issues, it fixed emergency egress issues, it fixed stairs. It just doesn't meet the interior zone ordinance. So I hear what you're saying, yes, they bought a piece of property, they can't expand towards the water. They knew what they're getting into, but they also felt they had the ability to make some adjustments to the existing house. And then it became apparent that, we had to come here, and we know that's a difficult lift. Getting a variance is difficult, but we also felt that there were so many issues with this. It's such a unique piece, and we felt we had a strong case that we could present it to you. The only other variance I've ever received was a disability variance. That's easy to get.
Yeah, we don't
Or
even,
easier,
I mean,
Tim does those here. We don't even deal with them anymore ourselves, yeah.
yeah.
So,
I mean, could you assert that in good faith, they believed that, given the way it was identified as being in shoreland zone, that they purchased it, and the part of the price was in consideration of the fact that they could, in fact, modify it, only to discover later on that it was not?
Yeah, I mean, that's putting words in their mouth. I mean,
That's a question.
Yeah.
I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth.
Did this go
Steve, did you
through
have
a
a-
public sale? Was the property listed on the MLS before your sister bought it? Okay. And did it say it was shoreland zone? If everything in the town said it was shoreland zone,
well, the property, the property card and the tax map says
well,
it is.
that's where we get our information as.
Correct, and that's
as-
where the Realtor would get their
Realtors,
information.
yes.
They would not have gone to the extent that we have to get into this. kind
I've
of
only had this
detail.
happen one other time. It was a permit that I was looking at after the fact and after it was all built, and it was in Cundy's Harbor. It was very, very deep, and never did it ever come across anybody's thinking of, and it wasn't me, that it doesn't matter. But all of a sudden I said, this shouldn't have been put in. It's in the garage and it's too close. It's actually 250 feet plus. But you would have looked at that lot and thought, just like this lot, it's shoreline, and not even think, like, oh my goodness, it's more than 250 feet deep. I'm just saying, it's happened, I've seen it already.
let me ask
And-
something, oh, Steve, you had something?
Oh, I was wondering what the assessing cards, assessing records, how was it assessed? In the shoreline or?
I don't have it in front of me.
Interior.
I'm just gonna say, from what Davis said, it's shoreland. And I know that there's water on the one end, so I'm gonna say
Yeah.
that I know the assessor well, and she's gonna say it's shoreland.
One thing we haven't talked about, which I think was mentioned in the application, was that there seemed to be some missing records or there was an expansion done previously. I mean, the reason this can't be expanded 30% is because supposedly it was already expanded 30%. How did we get to that
Yeah.
conclusion?
Well,
I'm not asking what went wrong. I said, how do
I mean,
how do we figure that out?
Times, I know.
yeah, we've done, done a lot of projects in a lot of coastal towns, and the records have not been great. They're much better now.
Well, but this
we-
is not, I mean, that's the kind of thing I would have expected 30 years ago, not 20 years ago, which was, as I understand it, it was supposedly approximately 20 years ago when the expansion was
Yeah,
done.
well.
Says
How do we-
2010.
And my question is, how do we know there was an expansion, period?
Well, there's nothing in the file, but you can clearly see that the living room expansion is not part of the original house. We were told, I think the previous owner said that they did an expansion in 2010. That's where we got the information from.
But this is all hearsay.
Well, yes, correct. So therefore, if the expansion were prior to 1989,
Right,
we would have leftover volume.
right.
But I can't say with a straight face, and I certainly can't say with my license in the line that that's prior to 1989. It looks sooner. I'd love for it to be. It'd make my life
But
easier.
is that your responsibility? I mean,
Yeah, I don't, I mean,
isn't it
Did I hear
isn't it
you
the town's
correct?
responsibility to demonstrate that it was expanded?
Did I hear you correctly that the former owner asserted that the expansion was done
I
in
believe so.
2010?
Candy, maybe you know. I mean, I wasn't privy to all these conversations they had when they bought the house.
I live across the street.
Can you
and-
step up and
Yeah.
identify yourself? If you-
I'm Barb Rondo. I live kind of kitty corner across the street. And the previous owner, I knew I knew the last three owners, because I've been there since '83. And I know the last owner, who is a friend of mine, but they did an the whole living room was added on. The dormers on the second floor were, I don't know if they were renovated or added, and there was a lot of work done on the chimney. And that was probably 10, 15 years ago.
And was that when the basement, when it was put on a foundation as well?
No, the basement was done with the second back owner. I don't know that it's ever been dry, because, when they were digging it, as fast as they dug, it filled up with water.
Might be in Harpswell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Join the
know-
club.
Yeah. And I thought there were some other restrictions in the deed.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
How we feeling?
Same way I felt before, actually.
Which is,
It appears to me this buyer bought in good faith. And even if needed to do something, believed the property to be in the shoreland zone, because the town record said it was in the shoreland zone. Now,
I mean,
knowing what has been going on for the last 4 years in real estate, I think anybody would be before us that had bought that place. You'd have had to have a structural engineer
Right,
in there.
right.
And most home inspectors don't look at you and say, oh, you should have a structural engineer in here.
right. I mean, do you feel like we can do anything? I mean, I guess personally, I'd like to see the deeds, to see what
Okay.
the restrictions really are.
Particularly if there are additional restrictions.
Right, when we don't have, if there is such a covenant, we don't have it, we can't just read it. The other thing is, I still have questions about the structural stuff, whether it's really possible, whether it's really necessary to replace the structure with LVLs and not, whether it couldn't be done with a steel
Oh, I
structure.
suspect
And you're talking about
it was-
replacing the floor joists with
Replacing
steel,
the floor
as
joists with
opposed to
steel joists,
being a
right.
carrying beam or
Right, without
something, yeah.
raising anything up.
Yep.
You know, I'm pretty confident that,
Where would that fall under as a requirement for the owner to use a relatively unconventional structural system for a house? Yes, there are steel beams in houses all the time, but to have to use 6-inch wide flange, 22-foot-long beams to support, I mean, I've never done that before. But where in the provisions of the variance would we be required to have to do something like that?
there's, that the, in the reasonable return, that there's no way to accomplish what they need to accomplish without a variance. You know, that they could, if they could do that, they could get a reasonable return without increasing the volume of the structure. I mean, in essence, they wouldn't need a variance.
Well, if just from the shoreline zone, we wouldn't need a variance either.
I'm sorry?
I keep on coming back to that. If the code office could be directed to look at this as a shoreline project, we don't even need a variance.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we can do that. We don't have the, I mean, I think that would be something, a legal
And
proceeding.
And they're not going to, you talked to the planner about changing the rules too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to not continue this, but if you think if you think there's a possibility that we can do something by seeing that deed and maybe getting some more feedback from your engineer about what they think would be possible.
So, 2010, there was no you couldn't locate a building permit.
Correct. In the file.
You,
Were
you
there-
lived there in 2010, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
I wasn't looking for
No, I understand. I would just,
It's you.
I don't think there were there permits in 2010?
Yes.
Because it
sure.
was
oh, yes,
after I arrived.
yes,
I got one.
absolutely.
There was a plumbing permit.
No, we're going back.
They had a bathroom added to the living room, and they raised the door. There was considerable amount of work done,
Yeah, there were
thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
They were building permits back to about, it was prior to 2000, it was late 90s, I think.
1994 is a land use ordinance, and then they started requiring the permits. I mean,
Prior
it
to
goes
that, it was just a
back.
plumbing permit. I mean,
Way
when-
back.
when we built our house, which would have been 1986 or so, it was a plumbing permit. When I built my garage and shop, I think it was 1992, there was a permit. And that was the same time that there was a lot of changes at that time.
We built our house in 92, same
Yeah,
thing, it was
yeah.
a permit.
Yeah,
Issued by Roland Mayo.
right.
This is going to be a difficult structural challenge to leave everything in its place and insert 22-foot-long steel beams throughout the entire length of the house and set it into place onto some sort of bearing point, which have to be bearing points, not, I mean, that is very difficult. It's the whole length of the house with a chimney in the middle of it.
What does the subfloor look like? Was it redone when the foundation was poured?
Well, the first floor seems solid, I think, when they lifted it up.
Is it
I mean,
posted?
There are, the basement's big, there must be some beams and posts. The first floor is not an issue at all. It's, 22 feet's a long way for any wood, let alone 3 by 5. So, but I'm just trying to think of how to just do this. Getting it inside the house and setting it in place and in between, they would have to go between the kitchen and the living room. The living room is completely open to the dining room. It's a clear span. More beams in there. I mean, it's just such a difficult challenge. I texted my engineer, but he's not answering to see if,
Is your engineer local?
he's in Yarmouth. We work with him all the time.
Would it had made a difference to you if you could get in, if we could get inside the other day?
I would have liked to have
I
seen
think
inside,
we
but
all,
on the other hand,
I
I'm
think
not.
we all,
I'm not
I don't know, I did, would get a feel for the place, structurally and bouncing
I
around.
mean, I'm not saying it's practical or possible, I'm just saying that theoretically, I'm pretty sure that you could get the load carrying capacity in that height. You
Would
know,
it be
just,
helpful, or is it too, to your point? Have an interior inspection and have that engineer accompany us to describe
Yeah.
this, or is that too much?
I suppose that's possible, but, yeah, I don't know.
I defer to your
Yeah.
judgment, that's.
Yeah.
Ned, I'm a little bit confused here about what your thoughts on the towns, and Pat, the towns had it in the shoreline zone, but all of a sudden, you've got a problem in front of you, and, okay, that may be so, but it's not so with the problem, and, at this date, it's not. So I couldn't was there how much of a hardship is it if there was an error in the town's records?
I guess I don't.
I know I know how it affected your design, absolutely. But don't we have information in front of us that says it's not, so you have to act in that regard, right?
It's not what, I guess I'm not following.
Oh, it's not in the shoreline zone.
Right,
It's,
right.
it's in another, the interior, whatever, the interior zone.
So are you trying to say that the town bears some responsibility for the way
No.
that it does not?
No.
That it was the responsibility of the purchaser to be
Right.
certain what they were buying?
Right, right. I work for towns, that's
Right.
my living, and no, I don't think that.
Yeah, I mean, the
There
town.
was an
they-
error in the
they made a-
town's
they made a-
record,
They made a
but
mistake, but
But it's not clear to what extent the
On-
homeowner
on the face of the
actually
earth
relied
right
on
now,
the nature
it's-
of the zoning
Right.
for the property.
It is what it is.
Purchased it. I mean, that's,
Unfortunately.
I wouldn't have done that. I mean,
But I do think that variances are not given lightly, but it's part of the town ordinance to allow for unique circumstances. And, you know, in terms of a variance request, and I've been involved in many and said, no, this will never fly. Of all the variance requests, I mean, this is up there as this is a reason why you're here as a board, because it's unique, and it doesn't, I don't think this sets a precedent for the next neighbor to put on a 10,000 square foot addition. I mean, this is not a precedent-setting decision, in my opinion, for a board to look at the circumstances we have here.
yeah, I mean, I've said this dozens of times. It's nice to have a clear line, something black and white for us to rule on, and most of the time, I'm grateful for not having a lot of discretion. We can make a clear decision. This is one of those cases where I'm sympathetic. I mean, I like what I see what you're trying to do. And it's a case where I feel like, it would be good if we had some discretion. I'm just not sure we do. That's the problem. That's the problem I have.
Would this be something that Amy could be asked to look at?
I suppose. I think I know what she'd say. The black letter of the law, I think, is pretty clear. Like I say, the thing that might change my mind would be the deed.
Well,
If, and
having
that
to
might
look
be a
at it
question
in
for her.
concert with the deed.
Ask that of Amy. Can we consider this as part of, does a covenant on the property impact
Yes.
how we evaluate the value of the property? Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question.
Not too much.
you probably want to get a copy of it and read it first, right?
Yeah.
Who knows what's
Right.
actually in there?
That's
We
probably a
haven't.
good idea, but that then delays it even further.
Right.
I can send everybody the last few deeds.
Yeah, anybody can look them up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have my laptop with me.
I mean, are we feeling that it's worth continuing this? Do you think there is some wiggle room here for us to? I mean, the other thing we can do is deal with it. And assuming we did turn it down, there always is the possible for reconsideration. You can request a reconsideration if you come up with something you think is worth showing us. I'm just trying to figure out how to resolve this in the most efficient way possible.
Right, I guess, so the deed is there to prove that they own the property,
Right. The question is,
which we've supplied.
what are the impacts of this, supposed covenant that we've heard?
Well, I can say we didn't make up
Right.
the covenant, and it just means we can't expand towards the water, and the covenant says it needs to maintain a cottage feel.
Right, but it seems to me like we ought to see it. And we may want to ask the town's attorney about it, whether that's something that would apply or would affect the reasonable return standard. Follow me?
Actually, I don't. What if we,
One, I'm unwilling to accept hearsay on the covenant, just, a verbal recitation of what somebody's impression is of what it says. I'd like to read it. Second is, I'm not sure, even if it is that restrictive, that we can use that as a justification to find in your favor on the reasonable return standard.
well, I thought.
I mean,
Pat did a
that could
great
be-
job
that could be
explaining the
considered-
reasonable return.
Now, let me finish. That could be considered something that a previous owner did, was this, what's the other?
Yeah, there wasn't the result of
The
an act.
the hardship is not the result of action taken by the applicant or a prior owner. The application, the establishment of that covenant may be,
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're not looking to expand horizontally the structure. I thought Pat did a great job at indicating how, you buy a property that has a 3-bedroom house on the waterfront, yes, it's expensive. But if you say, well, you can't occupy the house because it's safe, you can't build onto it because you need a variance, and you're not gonna get a variance, but you have a beautiful piece of property, I mean, that's not a reasonable return on investment. That's an unreasonable return on investment. You can't live on it. You have a garage, and that's it. So, I mean, reasonable, yeah, it's a relative term, but, no one would buy a piece of property with a house on it, they can't live in it.
well, here's what the courts have said on the reasonable return. It says, most court cases in Maine pertaining to zoning variances and the undue hardship test have focused on whether the applicant can realize a reasonable return on the property without the variance. The court has made it clear that reasonable return does not equal maximum return, which I don't think is what we're talking about here. It is extremely difficult for an applicant to prove that he or she cannot realize a reasonable return and that no other permitted use could be conducted legally to realize such a return. This goes on and on and on, but typical request for a setback variance to allow a deck, porch, garage, storage building, and so on will have to be denied on the basis of the reasonable return standard, absent proof that the person has tried to sell that property as is and no one will buy it unless the proposed construction can occur, or that the property cannot be used for any legal purpose other than any other legal purpose under the zoning ordinance without a variance. The Maine court has held in some cases that a reasonable return can be realized by recreational uses and lake access. I mean, that's pretty harsh.
So why even have has there ever been a variance granted in the history of Maine?
One since I've been on this board, and that's 20 years. Under that standard. I mean,
But reasonable, I think, is a word you can define in the dictionary that doesn't mean you can buy something for $100 and you can only sell it for $1.
I mean,
That's not reasonable. That's got to be, I mean, I don't have a dictionary on me, although I guess I could Google it. But
no,
I
I
understand,
I hear what you're saying, and we do have some discretion there, but it's not wide open, I don't think.
yeah, I guess that's what we're asking.
So I guess that's what
From the board is-
we're arguing about, is where is the line? And again, I do have the question about whether the covenant would apply. I mean, if the covenant applies, and we can use that as a reason, I think we've got I think we may have a case to grant the variance.
Can she email the covenants? Is that something she would do? I mean, I probably doesn't have access to it.
I mean, do we want to continue this? Do you want to, or do we want to vote?
The covenant isn't attached to the deed, meaning you guys don't have access to
No, we just have a short quitclaim deed, I think, or warranty deed, and it's,
Well, in the chain of title, there needs to be that covenant somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe
well, it says,
other property holders.
it says right here in the deed, situated in the town, county of Cumberland and state of Maine, more fully described in Exhibit A attached hereto and made a part hereof, and we don't have,
And we don't have that.
we don't have
no.
Exhibit A.
And they're doing deeds like that now. They don't just type everything all over again.
Yeah,
They just
they
have
just-
a cover page and say, okay,
Go
now
look.
refer to this.
You go find it.
You go find it, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah,
They don't.
but it's easy to find.
Yeah, it's not
At
like
the
you have to make a
registry.
trip and spend a day at the
Yeah.
registry
And
anymore.
online.
Yeah, you can get it online, I presume.
Predates them, and so
But
when
still.
Sue and Paul bought the property.
Can you,
bought it without-
I'm sorry, can you
I'm sorry.
step up there and make your comments at the microphone?
I don't squeeze as well as I used to. Sorry, Candy Wright again. To Barb's point, that covenant pre-exists this. So when
Right.
Paul and Sue, the previous owners, bought it, that covenant was in place. So it wouldn't just be in this contract, it would be in that previous contract as well. So even if it weren't filed with this for some bizarre reason, it should be in y'all's records for
Right.
that previous one.
Right, there's a reference someplace,
Yeah.
somewhere. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm assuming this thing originally ran for 50 years or 25 years or something.
I'm not sure,
Yeah, we don't know how far back
but
it
it's
goes.
been several years. Barb, do you know how long Paul and Sue owned it?
I don't know, maybe 2005?
Okay, so,
2005,
so at least 2005 to now.
yeah.
Yeah, so, anyway, that
I
was,
mean, let's say we got that, and essentially, we got the language, and it essentially states what we've been told. How does that change our consideration? I'm having a hard time
Well,
understanding how in fact it would.
If the house is uninhabitable, as is, and you can't build another house, then, then the property is not usable as a residential property anymore.
It says you can't build going forward toward the shoreline, and you can't build other places, but you can do modifications to the existing house that are different than those that are described here.
We can go up. We can't go anywhere else, essentially, the road, covenants.
But the amount of modification means that you're gonna have to meet code if you go up, right?
Right. And
For
because this road there's a 40-foot setback off a road in a road in Harpswell, and that's what we're running into. Because technically, this is a non-conforming structure. And so, we're trying to make it, well, it's non-conforming in lots of code issues, but it's also non-conforming in the zoning, in the zoning ordinance. So, with the variance, we'd be allowed to reduce the height setback or reduce the road setback, one or the other. I guess height setback would probably be easiest. That's actually volume.
You want
Sorry,
a
volume, because height
variance.
is- Height's a shoreline thing. The interior zone cares about a 30% volume. You got rid of it, not you, but the town got rid of the 30% in volume and area as part of the shoreline zoning. So DEP removed that. It's easier now dealing with the DEP rules because you deal with footprint and building height And those are the two restrictions. Volume is really difficult to calculate. We build a 3D model so we can calculate the exact volume of a house. We calculated the volume of the living room and the bathroom, and there was a little bit of square footage left over on the table, but it was the 30% volume was maxed out. So that was done in 2010. So technically, maybe that even wasn't allowed. Or they used a shoreline zoning ordinance, because it wouldn't have been non-conforming as part of the shoreline zoning. So it wasn't an issue in 2010 because it didn't come up. That's a guess, right? It's a total guess. So, we're really in a challenging spot here. So we have the ability to go up, and the owners have the ability to restructure the floor, make proper head heights, make proper egress, life safety features.
Let me, I'm reluctant to even say this, but one solution, and it just seems perverse, but one solution would be to make a small lot on the shoreland so that the house is not on a piece of property in the shoreland zone, and then apply for a practical difficulty variance.
We wouldn't have road frontage, or, I'm sure that would be a difficult lot to subdivide.
It would. It's not, it'd be a funky lot, but,
Probably
Yeah,
can't.
I can't imagine.
that's right, you need the road frontage,
Andy might
right?
have more to say on that one.
That's right, I forgot.
One of the covenants is you can't subdivide. So you can't build forward and you cannot subdivide.
In that 15 years?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that
I like the
15 years
covenants.
is running.
Running right now, so we might be closer to 14 and a half,
Yeah,
14.
yeah.
Absolutely, when they
Still
bought it
kind
was
of
15.
A long time.
So, and I think he's mentioned all of them, so it's keeping in the style of the cottage, which they're trying desperately to do. You can't move forward, and you cannot subdivide. So, like even the property behind, which is, he said, is actually adjoins mine, and it's nothing but ledge. You'd be blasting to Kingdom Come to do anything. You couldn't even subdivide that and build on that. Like, you couldn't get further away. Yeah. Anyway, so, but those are the big three. You can't subdivide, you can't build forward, and you have to maintain the style of the cottage.
Yep.
So,
I would have done it if I owned the property. Boy,
And there's no permit from 2010 to even show what the expansion was, right?
no, you've done your best to estimate what it was, yeah.
Yeah.
David, at the risk of beating the drum too much, could you just recap as succinctly as possible why you think we should grant a variance to this property and uniquely not create some kind of precedent
We
by doing
don't,
this?
we don't create precedent.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I think they recognize, everybody recognizes that boards of appeals are citizen boards, and we're not professionals, and we make mistakes. So if we,
I
if
just
we
want
do
to hear his
something-
best argument all
Yeah.
over again, because it feels like a long time ago with all the
I think the
discussion.
precedent you're referring to is more like the neighbor or the guy down the road doing what we're doing. There's so many unique features about this property. It's certainly the largest property that we've worked on in Harpswell in the shoreline zone. Most people want to be, most of the time we're working on houses that are way too close to the water. This one, will handle all the sea level rise we have. So I think it's really about, so that's how I think of variances, is you don't want to say yes very easily, because then you have to say yes to the next guy. But there's so many unique elements to this that you'll never find another piece of property like this to come forward with restrictions are set forth. And I think also, it's all inadvertent, it happened in the 50s, but, if that road were not put where it was, I wouldn't be here either in front of you. It actually, that affected the property. The way the code reads, because the road goes through it, in impervious surface calculation, we can't count the other side of the road. So Harpswell's taking care of that little portion of it, but it's totally unbuildable. You couldn't build on that other lot anyway. But if the road were over there, then, then we wouldn't be in a non-conforming house.
Why isn't this a setback variance? Why is this an undue hardship as opposed to just
Oh.
a regular?
Oh, you mean a setback for single-family dwelling?
Yeah.
I don't think that, I don't know, does that cover expansions?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
It's because a setback variance, this is not the primary year-round residence.
Oh, right, right.
It's that one, so because of that, we can't use the setback variance. And because of the shoreline, we can't use that next one, right? The practical
The
difficulty
practical
variance.
difficulty would be the one I would,
So there's actually no title of this variance that we're asking for. It's just the first one you mentioned. The others have titles to it. But that's why we have to use this, the one we're using.
So back to your question.
what should we do?
I would vote in favor of granting the variance.
No.
But you can ask
Yeah.
everybody to vote. And then we can,
It needs a second.
Well,
that wasn't a motion.
Oh,
No,
I
you're-
thought you made a motion.
No.
Oh, you're just giving an
He
opinion.
asked me my opinion on what we should do.
I gotcha.
Okay. The other thing is, we could ask if it would be a real problem if we postponed till the next meeting with an opportunity to get a hold of the deed and submit it to the town attorney. But
I'm afraid of
What
what
do
she'd
we-
say.
what is she gonna say?
Right, she's good, yeah.
But in this particular case,
I know what you're saying.
Oh,
and
okay.
I've-
What was that? I
you
didn't-
want me to move it?
No, Steve, I mean.
I didn't hear what you-
I guess I'm feeling sympathetic, and I would like to find a way to do it,
Yeah.
you know? Just, and I think we're pushing the envelope
We
in
may
order
be.
to do it, but as a matter of just public policy or just common sense, it seems like a reasonable thing to do, but,
We've explored every possible way out of this.
yeah.
And if the building were not unsafe, I might feel a
Say-
different way.
You'd say live with it,
Live with it, yeah.
right?
But, and obviously, they're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah. Well, and the covenants are all, somebody was trying to protect that property, and I'm sure didn't anticipate this.
No,
No.
I don't think so. It's,
What- Tim, there's no requirement for any kind of public notice. Wait a minute, what was did this appeal, did it get public notice?
Yep,
For what,
Yes.
300, was it?
250
You know,
feet or whatever, yeah.
Feet, okay, so,
Which is me and Barb.
okay, so the public had notice and,
and you're here, and do you have any objections?
You know,
Barb?
Purely from a view standpoint, I'm the person directly behind. So purely from seeing the construction every day and it going up, it's me. I don't have an objection to it, mostly for what you're talking about, because I would far rather see it repaired than go into disrepair. To see that beautiful property just kind of not get used, and I'm far more fearful of it not getting used and falling into further disrepair and just sitting unused and uninhabited than I am about the 5 feet. And like I said, that's, if you're asking who's directly behind, whose view gets hit, it's mine. But I'd rather see that than the house sit empty and unusable. That, whether it was my sister who owned the property or not, I talked to my husband about this before we came, and I just, it's such a beautiful property, the idea of the house sitting there and just slowly not getting used and potential decay and not being able to do things to it, it's just unimaginable. So if you're asking from a view standpoint of it going up, no, I don't have a problem with it.
I also look at the roof line. You know, you're talking about 5 feet, which is gonna raise up the living room ceiling.
No,
No.
living room
No.
stays as it is. It's the main part of the house with the chimney.
All right.
So just that part.
I don't know. I don't know if there are more covenants in the deed that are worth a look. I don't know how you operate if you have to make a decision tonight.
We don't have to.
We don't have to make a decision tonight. That's why we're asking.
Yeah, I mean, you know, our neighborhood has been, you know, little 1,000 square feet camps and houses, and, you know, now we're getting,
It used to be.
Yeah.
I know the neighborhood, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there's some big changes. Yeah.
Are you okay with it?
yes and no.
Pete, you're-
Okay.
That's fair.
So we got a yes and a maybe. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the value of that property in a lot of people's eyes is just the amount of space they have and the view they have,
Great lot.
you know, as opposed to an old, well, in the original cottage has been redone by the Campbells. And that part of it is more than livable.
Mr. Chair, if I may
Yep.
address you?
Can I
It-
speak
It
to
seems
this?
that,
No?
at least in part, the rationale for approving or disproving this is reliant on the existence of the language in a deed that we have not seen.
Yep.
And that I don't personally view it as appropriate to have a motion absent that, being able to actually see that.
Yep.
I also believe that, again, this is an opinion of one, that we need to collectively be very, if there's going to be a motion to approve or disapprove, I think that we need to articulate that with great precision,
Yep.
which is not something that we can do here and on the fly. So I think a little bit more consideration
Well, one
with
thing-
respect to that would be helpful.
And, well, yeah, we could continue, and that would give us an opportunity to see the actual deeds, and it would also give me an opportunity to draft some findings based on what I heard
Right.
tonight, some,
Because we do have to be very precise
Right.
about why we,
and for simple stuff, I usually write them out
yeah.
right here at the end of the meeting, so we're done, and we don't have to
Yeah.
come back. But we've heard enough tonight that I think I could draft some findings that we can review.
No, I'm on the same page as Pat, which is I'm very empathetic with respect to this request. Struggling a little bit with respect to the code and reflecting this decision in the code. But I'm hopeful that with respect to a little bit more time to consider it, which time is necessary to review the deed anyway, that perhaps we may be able to find that rationale. This is indeed a unique case with some spectacularly, every exit has been sealed with respect to alternatives, and you've been very diligent with respect to articulating those and sharing those with us in a very candid fashion, and I appreciate that.
Are we in agreement that we should continue this
Would it behoove us to have an interior
and have a site visit? Yeah,
site visit and
Yep.
get a feel for the place?
yep, I would like to see the interior.
That's a great suggestion.
Yep. Does that work for you? No great hardship to you to continue this for a month?
Well, I mean, I'm not the owner.
Well, you
We
represent the
had
owner.
contractors lined up about 3 months ago to start working on the house when we felt we had a project. But, you know, if we force a vote right now, we probably wouldn't be approved. So we'll have to reconvene next month. I mean, do we have to wait 2 months because we have to get stuff in?
1 month.
So a month from today, a month from right
Yeah,
now?
we
Could we push it faster than that?
nobody likes to do it. It's difficult to schedule.
It is difficult to schedule, but do you think it's worth trying?
Well, we don't have anybody here that can tell us what the schedule is, and we need to have this room, and there are a limited number of days that it's available. You know, I mean, we can, I guess, leave it up to my discretion to schedule it, but then, you know,
I would leave it up
then
to
we
your
have to,
discretion, but
Yeah, I mean, you
I
know.
would make myself,
my inclination is to, we'll continue it for a month, I think. That's, you know, this room was reserved for this purpose, this night, every month. You know, even though we don't meet every month, it's, you know it's available.
The covenants, well, if we didn't have the covenants, we probably would, I mean, we could expand as much as we wanted to. So we need to provide that language to you, and then what, and then, and go into the interior of the house and show you that.
Yeah, and I would also like to hear from the engineer too, what he thinks about, although, yeah, I mean, you know, just, if he rejects it out of hand, fine, you know, I don't want to be engineering your house for you, but I'm a little bit skeptical that you really need to raise the thing up a full 14 inches to reinforce that structure. On the other hand, I'm not going to quibble about that. If we were to grant the variance, I'm not going to quibble about, you know, the amount of the variance. Yeah. You know, I think if I'm going to draft the findings and so on, I'll be referring to your plans for the, you know, to quantify or to describe the variance. Basically, I'll say to conform to the plan submitted with the application.
Right.
So I'll make a motion that we continue this until our next regularly scheduled meeting, and that we have the, and that we schedule a site visit on a normally it's the Monday morning at 8 AM before the meeting. And that we're requesting the deeds that outline the covenants and some feedback from the engineer.
So, I'm just looking at my calendar, May 27th happens to be a holiday, which is a Monday before the last Wednesday of the month.
Is that Memorial Day, celebrated on Monday? We can do it on Tuesday.
Yeah,
Is
Tuesday.
that okay?
Yeah, we don't need this room.
So we'll schedule a site visit for Tuesday. Is that the fourth Wednesday of the month? Is that what you got there?
Oh, actually, oh, no, I'm sorry. That would have been the 5th. So the 22nd is the 4th, and the 20th is my aunt and uncle's anniversary.
did we just call a date?
1, 2, 3, 4. So
Wait a minute.
May 22nd is the fourth,
Yep.
and that's a problem for you?
No, it's not a
So
problem.
then
And
Monday,
the
the
ninth,
20th.
and the 9th, and the 20th is okay, Monday,
Or 27th?
Monday the 20th?
Yep.
Okay, so site visit Monday the 20th.
Monday.
A
And then the meeting would be
22nd. Yep.
So 5/22.
What time for the site visit?
8 AM.
8 o'clock?
Well, that was a motion. That was a long one.
Second.
Do we?
Any discussion?
Yeah, do we know whether there's any more exhibits to the deed? Or did you just say there was, what did,
I asked for all the deeds that we need in order to
Okay.
see the covenants.
all the,
We
okay.
need, we want the any covenants that are in effect. Okay. So, all in favor? So we'll continue in a month.
Thank you. I'm assuming I won't need to represent
No.
this entire project again.
No, that will just be the
I
new.
saved my notes, I'm happy to.
Well, thank you for being patient with my floundering.
Well,
No, you're doing great.
Enjoyed this.
a little,
It took me,
little more involved than we
That
expected. It's
point.
always a surprise when you get here.
I built 8 houses on lakes, on oceans, and all. It's a horrible situation.
I'm bothered, you can't,
Oh, yeah, no.
there's
oh,
no
we need to
permit.
adjourn.
This is just 2010-ish. I mean, things were pretty tight.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Things are pretty
Ned.
tight in 2010
Yeah,
here.
excuse me, we need to adjourn.
Yeah,
We need
it was.
the minutes.
Oh, no.
Oh,
We need to
Yeah,
approve
we
the
need-
minutes.
I
to
don't
do
have a
some more.
copy of those.
Well, I got a copy that's printed over
Yeah,
something
I-
else, if you, it's printed on scrap paper, if you want to look at it.
I'm going
but
to abstain
I
from
s-
that
Yeah.
vote
No,
since I
that's-
wasn't
It's on my
here, so.
phone.
They were, I was fine with the minutes. I would move that
Then
we.
I am fine.
I would move that we accept the minutes as drafted.
So it's going to be
Second.
301.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Folks, we're still, folks,
No.
excuse me,
We're still,
we're still in session here.
I thought we were done.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Motion is to accept the minutes as drafted.
second.
All in favor? Motion carries. 3-0, 1 abstention. And no other business? Oh, we did. They wanted us to consider alternative schedules for June 26th and December 25th.
Well, we
What's-
probably ought to do that now as opposed to wait till May.
Right, right. Is June 20, what is June 20, is that the 4th of July? What did I do with my phone?
No, but wasn't there something about the selectmen needed to move something?
I don't know. Let's look at that.
does Mary Ann know any, she might have some. She's on her way out.
Well, was that the special town meeting, maybe?
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Tim.
The comprehensive plan? Oh, okay. Well,
So,
I mean, the planning board is usually the previous Wednesday, so I don't think we should plan on that.
no.
The following Wednesday is the day before 4th of July,
Yeah,
which
don't we have to,
I don't have a problem
don't we
with.
have to
but-
communicate with the honchos here, with the scheduling gurus? and
Well,
see
this,
Well,
this
the
comes
rules
from, this comes from
what's
them.
open.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
didn't
but-
tell us what was open.
Right, so I
Right.
think we need to find out
Now
from
what's
them
open, yeah.
before we
That'd be a good idea.
use our own
Well,
imagination.
let's pick something and get it done, and we'll, if there's a problem, we'll worry about it
All right,
next meeting. So why don't,
how about the 25th of June? That's a Tuesday.
yep, that's fine. So the day before the normal,
Yep.
so 25th of June,
Tuesday,
and then
6/25.
December. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to do this? Do you want to ask them to suggest some days?
Well, I think December we can hold off and ask them, because we're going to end up changing the June one anyway, of course.
Or we won't have one, because we haven't had
Or we
one in a
may
year.
not have one. I think we can
Yeah,
ask them to give us some choices for December.
okay. All right,
I think we,
so we're set on June 25th unless there's
Yeah.
a conflict, and
Yep.
we'll ask for what's available in December. Yeah. Okay. I don't think we need to vote on that. Any other business?
nope.
And we're
We adjourn.
adjourned at 8:05.